All right. Welcome to another edition of Shabbat Lounge. This is Matt.
And Jake here.
And we are coming to you with another Torah portion. So, Jake, what do they need to do?
You need to like and subscribe and make sure you give the thumbs up and pass this on to your neighbor and go read this for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing. If you haven't read the Torah portion, just turn this off and please go do that right now. That's step one.
Right. And then come back, and this should be the first podcast you turn on.
Yeah, we appreciate if you share this with someone, if you like it, if you leave us a comment, let us know that you indeed listen to it. So we always like it when people leave us little Easter eggs of some nugget that we said during our conversation.
The non-pagan Easter eggs.
Yes, the non-pagan Easter eggs. We do not promote Easter eggs in any way. In fact, we're very much against them.
That's right.
So
yeah, and check out Sabbath Lounge, and you can pull up all the Torah portions there, and you should be able to get all of these recordings there also.
And interviews and more.
Exactly.
All right, so Jake, what's this one called?
So this is Shofetiym or Shofetiym, something like that.
And it's Judges.
Right, so that's Deuteronomy 16, verse 18 through 21, verse 9.
All right, so it's in this Torah portion, you've got this reference to blind justice and that Yah is no respecter of persons. So at the beginning, he talks about that. So at the very beginning, he says, in 19, you shall not wrest judgment, you shall not be any respecter of persons.
Right. So how does that square?
Yeah, treat everybody, like in the book of James, it talks about don't show impartiality. That's directly tied to the scripture. And, when back in the day when I was in regular Christianity, I did not know that those scriptures were tied together. But now I do.
There you go. Now you do.
And so recently we did a teaching about blind justice, didn't we, Jake?
Yes, we did. And whereas the concept that it stands for, about not being partial in your justice, there's more to that story. So go check out the podcast we did on that.
Yeah, we've often think of blind justice as a good thing, but we kind of talk about it's a bad thing.
Yeah, so
and that's what Scripture says.
Yeah, just a different perspective on it, a different shifting your paradigm. And I think the important thing to think about with that is, what should justice have its eyes on?
Yeah, that's good. All right, so then we have this principle of 2 or 3 witnesses to establish a matter.
You need 2 or 3, and one should have curlers in their hair. I think that's...
One should have a microphone.
Yeah, that might come later. So
it's 3 images, but only 2 people, I guess.
Yeah.
So we see this in John 8.
Right, so Yeshua went to the Mount of Olives early the next morning. He returned to the temple courtyard. All the people went to him, so he sat down and began to teach them. The experts in Moses' teachings and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught committing adultery. They made her stand in front of everyone and asked Yeshua, "Teacher, we caught this woman in the act of adultery. In his teachings, Moses ordered us to stone women like this to death. What do you say?" They asked this to test him. They wanted to find a reason to bring charges against him. Yeshua bent down and used his finger to write on the ground. When they persisted in asking him questions, he straightened up and said, "The person who is sinless should be the first to throw a stone at her." Then he bent down again and continued writing on the ground. One by one, beginning with the older men, the experts in Moses' teachings and Pharisees left. Yeshua was left alone with the woman. Then Yeshua straightened up and asked her, "Where did they go? Has anyone condemned you?" The woman answered, "No one, sir." Yeshua said, "I don't condemn you either. Go. From now on, don't sin."
So, Jake, this, what does this make you think of with the 3 witnesses?
I think you're muted.
Oh, yeah, I am. Now you're muted.
Now I'm muted.
So what does that make you think of with the witnesses?
Yeah, so they all went away, and now there's no witnesses.
Yeah. So That's exactly right. So, and there's definitely lots of things going on here.
Right.
So they didn't necessarily follow all the rules that they were supposed to follow, because they were supposed to bring the other person as well.
Right. If they're
And they
caught in
did
the
not.
act,
Yeah.
no reason not to bring both of them.
Right.
And then,
So,
there's the idea. So this kind of applies more than just a matter of, hey, two people saw this happen, right? So this can be used as two witnesses, as in two different scriptures that point to the same thing, right? And this is
oh yeah,
used
yeah, yeah.
as all right, there's two witnesses at the
Two witnesses to
end
establish a
times,
matter.
right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yahweh calls two witnesses to witness against us, right?
The two
So
witnesses in Revelation.
right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to this, two or three witnesses.
Yeah. And then you see this concept here. Jake, did you know the word possess is used over 50 times in Deuteronomy?
Not until this very teaching.
Right.
So
It seems like he uses a lot. And so there's, he talks a lot about possessing and dwelling. Dwelling is to occupy, and live to thrive abundantly, but they can't do the live part if they don't do the things he asks them to do. They
right.
won't get the blessings.
Yeah, and we've kind of been seeing that throughout, the possess thing being.
It's definitely a problem for them.
Yeah, and it's definitely something he tries to hammer home. I mean, we're only chapter 18, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, or 16, but
Yeah, and you can't, if you can't possess the land,
you
you're not
can't
going to
dwell in it,
dwell, and you're not going to live very well.
right?
So it does go in order,
Right.
very much so. Well, and then he talks about having a king. So Jake, read this. What does he say? Does he actually say you have to have a king?
When you come to the land that Yahweh your Elohim is giving you, and you possess it and dwell in it, and then say, I will set a king over me, like all the nations that are around me, you may indeed set a king over you from whom Yahweh your Elohim will choose, one from among your brothers you shall set as king over you. You may not put a foreigner over you who is not your brother. Only he must not acquire many horses for himself, or cause the people to return to Egypt in order to acquire many horses, since Yahweh has said to you, you shall never return that way again, and he shall not acquire many wives for himself, lest his heart turn away, nor shall he acquire for himself excess silver and gold. And just to finish that off, and when he sits on the throne of his kingdom, he shall write for himself in a book a copy of this law, approved by the Levitical priests, and it shall be with him, and he shall read in it all the days of his life, that he may learn to fear Yahweh his Elohim by keeping all the words of this law and these statutes, and doing them, that his heart may not be lifted up above his brothers, and that he may not turn aside from the commandment, either to the right hand or to the left, so that he may continue long in his kingdom, he and his children in Israel.
So I have two things to say about that. Pretty good principle to live by. I mean, for everybody.
Right.
So I think that's safe to say. And then, interesting enough, King David is often, sometimes maybe, and especially in Judaism, sometimes he gets lifted pretty high, like he can almost do no wrong. But and I think a lot of people have this belief that they had to have a king, but I don't think they ever had to have a king. I think the only reason they have a king is they wanted one so bad. He was like, fine, you can have your king, but he should follow these rules. And if he doesn't follow these rules, there's going to be some things also that happen.
Right. It's right here in this first verse 14 here. I will say, let's see. When you're in the land and you will say, set a king over me like the nations around me.
Yeah.
Then he will give you just what you want.
And
It's
there's
the
another
Romans
scripture
1.
where he talks about the king's going to tax you. He's going to send your children off to war. Like,
right.
If this is really what you want, this is what's going to happen.
Yep.
And it does.
So even in their stubborn fallenness, he's trying to give them a hand up with, okay, when you mess up, do these things and it'll help you out. Yeah, this is just this short little section of scripture has a whole ton of stuff in it. I mean, write out the law and read it. And I think this is pretty interesting here. It shall be with him, verse 19, and he shall read in it all the days of his life. Why? So that he may learn to fear Yahweh by keeping all the words of this law. So that's how you learn to fear Yahweh, by keeping the law.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, and I also think that David represents us in a lot of ways. You can make an argument that in the kingdom, we are supposed to be like David, and David is in there as an example because it should be relatable to us because he's a man after Yah's own heart, but he was not perfect, but he continued to try to make teshuvah and repentance for the things that he did wrong, and that's what separated him from Saul.
Right.
Where Saul, in a lot of ways represents the Antichrist king, if you will. I'm pretty sure I did not originate that. That came from Tom Bradford, I think, is who I've heard say that. But I think that's pretty accurate, that Saul's the Antichrist king, and then David is more type and shadow of the Messiah, the Messiah. So,
yeah, it is interesting, Saul's progression, because he starts off he starts off pretty good and everyone loves him, and then it just goes downhill.
Yeah. It's a weird story too with him and David.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Jake, would you read all these things? These are the things that if you're a king, you're not supposed to have all this.
Yeah, don't have too many horses. Don't return to Egypt. Don't multiply women, silver or gold. Write his Torah and guard it, not going to the left or right. Don't have a big head about it, and you'll have long life.
Yeah. And then, with Saul, David, and Solomon, did it work out amazing? Can we say these all were just the most amazing kingships that ever lived on the planet?
Well, when you consider the rest of the kingships on the planet,
They might look pretty good.
So David probably is the best out of the group, but yeah, they all had their faults for sure.
Yeah, and it does kind of become a little bit like a soap opera with all these guys, with all their women and their wives and their money and the drama with their children. I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah.
So, but, and then in 18:9, you're not supposed to do magic. You're not supposed to have child sacrifices, and those are abominations.
It's an abomination. It sure is.
So, Jake, magic is bad.
Magic is bad. That's what it's telling us.
Mm-hmm.
So, would he call magic bad if you couldn't do magic? Would he tell you not to do it if you couldn't do it?
Magic is real, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah. Oh, I think that's what he's saying.
Yeah. Because growing up, I believe that that's a good point, because I'm pretty sure when I was younger in church, they taught me that magic's not real.
Yeah.
That's just not real. But unfortunately, we know that it is, and it's a real thing.
Yeah,
Always has been.
I think we tend to be looking at those times as our times, and we, how many of us are running around bumping into people doing magic stuff all the time? Like, I mean, legit magic stuff, not like illusions.
Yeah.
But not very often. I haven't anyway. So it's like,
and if they are, we don't know.
Right. So then you would think, well, magic is just made up because they've made it into this big, it's all over TV, and they've made it a toy, and they've made it a plaything.
Mm-hmm. And definitely there are people who do it just that fake things.
Yeah.
Sleight of hand, and they call it magic, and it's just hand tricking your eye. But there is a real magic. And so, there is a fake, just like everything. There's even with your faith, there are people who fake that too. And people fake magic, and then there are people who really tap into it and worship it.
Yeah.
So
bad news.
And back to those kings, we've got Saul, who he consulted witchcraft. and was not supposed to, but he did. So we have a little comparison between Deuteronomy 18:3 and Matthew 5:48.
All right. So 18:13 says, "Thou shalt be perfect with Yahweh thy Elohim." And then what is Matt? What do you say?
What do I say?
Yeah,
Matthew 5:48, be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which in heaven is perfect.
that's right.
Seem pretty similar, don't they?
They're pretty similar.
Yeah.
It's almost like they knew what it said back there.
Yeah, yeah. But I don't think I made that connection before, or definitely not in my Christian walk. So, and then we've got this, Jake. Explain this Deuteronomy 18:22, the prophet thing.
So let's see. When a prophet speaks in the name of Yahweh, if the thing follow not, nor come to pass, that is the thing which Yahweh has not spoken. But the prophet has spoken it presumptuously, you shall not be afraid of him. So yeah, this to me ties right into Deuteronomy 13. It's kind of like the other side of it.
Mm-hmm.
Deuteronomy 13 is if he says something, even if it does come to pass, but he's leading you away from Yahweh and his ways, then he's a false prophet. This is saying, this is kind of the easier option. It's like, or if he tells you something and then it doesn't happen, hey, the end times, Messiah returns 2030, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. And then he says, if that doesn't come to pass, they're a false prophet and have spoken presumptuously.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, I do think there's a difference in those two things, because somebody can be a false prophet, and that's one thing, but I think this is not the same thing. I don't think this person is, you know, I think a false prophet is trying to manipulate and trying to mislead. Sometimes you can have a dream, you can wake up and have this feeling, and you can be wrong about that.
yeah,
And I
that's
think
true.
that's what this is. I think that, and it just says, you probably don't have this gift of prophecy, and so
Or at least you didn't use it for this this
yeah.
prophecy.
But I do think it's probably a gifting and a thing that people get, and if you are going around and the things that you feel aren't coming true, then you don't have the gift of prophecy.
Yeah. Or you're
And
using it incorrectly. You had some
yeah,
bad chili or something.
yeah. So
Yeah, I think
because there is a difference in the penalties.
Yeah, I think you're right
very,
about
very
that.
different.
Yeah,
So,
13 is I think you stone him, right?
yeah, it's you're not messing around. So,
And this one is, hey, don't be afraid of that guy.
yeah. So
Don't listen to what he's saying, basically, is what he's saying here.
yeah. In Deuteronomy 19, you've got three coastal cities, and then we're going to talk about Cain and Abel. And so Jake, how is this? How does the Cain and Abel story prove this is the law before the law?
Okay, so this is actually talking about manslaughter, right? So whenever you would commit manslaughter, kill someone by accident, you could go to a city of refuge and be, allowed to hang out there until the priest dies, right? So, interestingly, that is a situation where your freedom depends on someone else dying for you, essentially. That priest has to die for you to be free.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a shadow of Yeshua. But as far as it relates to Cain and Abel, so I had this theory that the Cain and Abel story is not a murder situation; it's more of a manslaughter situation, because I don't think they knew that they could die yet, or they didn't understand it the way we do, at least until this happened, because he kills Abel, but the punishment for him is not the punishment for murder. The punishment he gets is the punishment for manslaughter.
Well, and to back up for a second, I think that it makes sense that they would be naive, if you will, and innocent like children.
Yeah.
And, you think about little kids playing, they don't know that if they, especially some really small children, they don't understand the concept of they pick that big stick up and they hit their friend right on the temple in the right spot, they could kill them.
Right.
They don't know that. And I think that that's a pretty good argument.
Yeah, I think when you look at the penalty, it lines up.
Yeah, yeah. Because otherwise, then it's a weird. It's something you have to wrestle with because the consequence should be death for him, but it's not.
Right.
And then so that to me supports that theory. And but that's a good example. If you've never explored the law before the law, see our friend Joshua Myers, and he has a cartoon series about the law before the law.
Right. Yeah, he does a pretty good job with that, and I think he captures a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
So
And we did an interview with him
That's
where
right.
we went through those. And then Jake, this Blood Avenger, 1911 through 13. I could see some people having that job title and taking great pride in being the Blood Avenger for their family.
yeah, this is like, I don't know. Seems to be the one that kind of fits, I guess, human nature. You want to
Yeah.
take vengeance, and here's your one opportunity to
It's like legal.
to be the avenger of blood.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if any movie makers out there that want to make a movie, The Blood Avenger or The Avenger of Blood, come talk to us. It's our idea first. So
That's right. We'll tell you how to do it.
That's right.
We want a percentage. And through Deuteronomy, he talks a lot as well about guarding the commandments, observing the commandments, love. So, so Jake, how does this work? How do you think it's possible that you're, by guarding the commandments, you're also loving?
Well, do you guard things you don't care about?
No.
Okay. Well, you probably have to care about it to guard it, right?
Right.
And then guarding it shows your love, and your walk shows that you love and that you're guarding it. So kind of works like that, I think.
Well, I also think if you're guarding the commandments, you're doing those things, and the commandments are how we show we love God, and it's how we show we love people.
Yeah.
And so by guarding them, you're also loving him. So, and that's what a lot of people don't understand is when Yeshua says, the thing that gets shortened in Christianity to love God and love people.
Yeah.
That is really just observing the commandments.
Right.
And people don't understand that.
Yep.
So you can't love God and you can't love people unless you guard his commandments.
Yeah.
And then this is a faith with action. This is not sit back and watch other people do it. This is very much involved faith.
Yeah, it's like any other relationship. I mean, you do things for the people you love, and we're out here wandering around, floating around in the ether here. That's right. So while we're doing that, there's things that we should be doing. So, and not doing. That's one thing. A lot of people, especially when you come to Christianity, you're like, oh, all these things I had to stop doing. And I think, and I looked at it that way too. And I wasn't as averse to that as many people, but I think the thing that's missed is it's not just about the things you need to stop doing. It's what things do you need to start doing. And I think that part gets missed.
Yeah, that's good. All right, in 1914, don't move the sandal. This is sandal covenant.
Right. This is Matt's favorite covenant.
I didn't know I had a favorite covenant, but apparently I do.
Yeah, it's the sandal covenant.
Yep. And it has to do with showing where your land boundary is. And moving the sandal, that's something today in our world we're like, huh? The sandal?
Yeah.
But it was like moving it's like just, it's voiding a contract. It's changing a legal, a legal claim on a piece of property. So it was a big deal. So it's like bearing false witness, and it's stealing. It's a lot of bad things, really. And then this list of things, we recently did a talk teaching. I don't know what you
Yeah,
call it.
we don't like to say teaching.
Yeah.
We're not really teachers, but
We did something about Christians follow Torah, and you can find that on Sabbath Lounge. And we talk about how um, many Christians they've been following Torah, and when we were too, and to a certain extent, that's been happening. So let's look at some of those things that prove that they follow Torah.
right. So no partiality in your interactions, right? No child sacrifice. I think we would all agree on that, right?
Right.
I mean, sometimes you don't even have to be a Christian to
Mm-mm.
accept that one, right?
Mm-mm.
Don't steal land. No false witness. So yeah, I think those are pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think that every Christian in the world would be like, yeah, we're not doing that. So, and they're following Torah.
Right.
Because show me the commandments in the quote unquote New Testament where it says, don't steal land and don't sacrifice children. I know where it says about partiality, and it does talk about lying and false witnessing, but anyway, definitely that comes from Torah.
Yeah. I think that steal land thing was verse 19, chapter 19, verse 14.
No. Okay. And then in 23-4, it says, listen, Israel, today you're going into battle against your enemies. Don't lose courage. Don't be afraid or alarmed or trembled because of them. Yahweh your Elohim is going with you. He will fight for you against your enemies and give you victory. So this is what you should say before you go to battle.
Right.
So still a good principle today.
Right. This is the let not your heart be troubled scenario because Yahweh goes before you. Be of a good courage, Matt.
All right. That's kind of like the Braveheart moment, by the way. And the priests go through the line of men, and this is what they tell them. All right. So there was an option when they were taking over the land and moving people out that there were some people that could surrender peacefully. There was an option for some of them, not all of them. Some of them, they were very specific on what they had to do. But
right. This is peace out, people.
yeah. And then these are the people we're talking about here. So
yeah, if you've ever seen a guy that looks like this, he's probably a bad guy.
Yeah, probably a bad guy. Probably in your nightmare. But these were the folks that total destruction.
Or at a furry convention.
Oh, I'm not familiar with that.
Me either.
Yeah. But definitely
threw me off your game there a little bit.
You did. Threw me off a little bit. The wheels are turning in my head slowly.
Oh no.
Yeah. I need a little grease though.
Yeah.
But total destruction to the following people. And so they're supposed to wipe them out. And you kind of are like, what's the big deal?
Yeah, wipe them completely off the face of the earth.
Why does he hate them so much? And a lot of people, this is one of those passages when I didn't understand these things correctly when I was teaching this to junior high kids a long, long time ago in a Bible class. I can remember being like, I don't know why he was so angry. I don't understand why.
He's not very nice.
Why he's so angry here, and then he seems to be so loving and kind later on. So Jake, just read a little bit about who each of these groups are, just that thing we talked about.
Okay, so the Hittites, they're the second son of Canaan, mountaineer, implication of a torn veil, Mount Hermon implications there too, and the Watchers. So I think the Watchers are some crazy dudes.
The Watchers would be like the Nephilim.
The Nephilims. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you got the Amorites from east of Canaan. They were the mountain dwellers.
And what were you saying about mountain dwellers?
So yeah, there's discussion on that being that these would be similar to what you would call dwarves or something like that, right? From not like not just short people. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean, like you had
Lord of the Rings
style, yeah, because you had giants in that time. You have these mountain dwellers of this time. You have, all kinds of things going on here that we just don't accept in today's, because we've been kind of programmed to think this stuff is all make believe.
Yeah, that doesn't happen anymore. That's not real, and I think you can make an argument. We were having a pre-show discussion about this is definitely seems like remnants of a pre-flood world that is very different than what we understand in modern historical terms, and that the pre-flood world was that's something you should study out. It's a rabbit trail we're not necessarily seeking to go on right now, but you should kind of look at that and have some kind of an understanding of what the pre-flood world was like and what Noah was up against and why God was so angry with it.
Right. Why he would destroy the whole world.
And it is connected to these guys because they somehow, legend has it that after the flood, some of these descendants go find this stuff and resurrect it.
So yeah, this is it talks about before the flood comes. It's talking about the Nephilim, and it says how they were there before the time of the flood, and then after those days also. Mm-hmm. So there's a strange situation there where these guys kind of return.
Yeah. So I think on Canaanite.
Yep. Yeah. So the Canaanites are, the name kind of says it, Canaan, right? So zealous, merchants, traffickers. What do you think they mean by traffickers?
Stealers of people, kidnappers.
Yeah.
So, kidnapping was a big deal in the old world. Frankly, it still is today. And human trafficking. It's definitely yucky stuff for sure. Nothing good. So
then the Hivites, 6th from Canaan, Ham, Mount Hermon villagers.
So Mount Hermon is where the incursion happened with the angels. And once again, long rest Rob Skiba. But Rob Skiba has some great teachings about Mount Hermon, and he went into great detail about some of that. And I think it makes a lot of sense. So if you've never listened to Rob about that, that's a good one to go to YouTube University on.
Yeah. And then just in terms of, wiping these people out, if you see this third picture, if you're watching the video portion, this is what they would do to people. They're babies. And that is evil beyond evil. And it's, you can kind of look around today and see similar evils to that. And you think, man, the hammer's going to drop soon.
Yeah.
Just because, he couldn't let that stand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah, it makes sense once you figure out what was actually going on there. And then there's two more, the Jebusites.
And the other thing we'd have to say about these two, these are also folks that weren't even supposed to be in this land, that were just, they knew that this land was special and that Yah wanted this land. And it's almost like they go in and try to occupy it because their intention is to overthrow God. It's one of those things where, like when you're in the Christian world and you read about the Tower of Babel and you're a kid and you're like, yeah, you have no idea what any of that meant.
Right.
It's like they built a big tower and then they got in trouble and it was, I don't know. It didn't make sense.
Yeah. The way it's explained is it sounds like just a fable to explain why we have different languages.
That's exactly right. And a lot of people teach it that way. But it's more than that. It's these people, their ancestors, who are trying to kill God. That's what they want. It's more than they really believe. They are at war, and they thought that they could. And those are the people. These are the true God haters. And unfortunately, today we still have God haters here. There are people who are still doing these kinds of things.
Yep.
Unfortunately. Maybe because they didn't get rid of them back then.
Probably. So then you have the Jebusites, Jebus descendant. Makes sense. Palestinian, Cain, 3rd from Canaan. So Perizzites, rural person, village from southern Canaan.
I hear a lot of Canaan in the Canaanites.
Yeah,
Maybe that's why it was called the land of Canaan.
lots of that kind of descendant thing happening.
Yeah. So go look up those people. Go, if you have a little time, research these tribal groups. If you just do a quick Google search, you'll find information about these guys, and you'll find
as much information as you could handle.
Yeah, and mostly that they're pagan and not good.
Yeah.
So I think we've about come to the end of Shofetiym.
Judges. So yeah, I think that's a good Torah portion. There's a lot in there. I mean, we say that every week, lots in there, but yeah, so this is Deuteronomy 16:18 through 21:9.
And we encourage you to go Google Sabbath Lounge. And if your group gets together and you need help with the Torah portions, we have them at your fingertips. If you just Google Sabbath Lounge Torah portions, you just have to find the week you're on, and you will find all kinds of handy links to help you go through the Torah portion.
Right.
We appreciate you being here. And this is Matt
and Jake
signing out.